So there I was connected to machines, heart rate monitors and everything. I went into a coma. The kidneys started to shut down. The other organs started to shut down. The doctors told my family, and it's even written in my medical records, that the family has been informed, patient is dying and literally is in the final hours of life, final stages. And it was at that point that I actually felt that I had left my physical body and was aware of everything that was happening. But the part of me that had left the body, I felt incredible. It was, I felt light, I felt free. The pain was gone, the fear was gone. You know, I feared cancer, I feared the treatments for cancer, I feared death, and all of that was just gone. I felt incredible. I felt alive, more alive than I ever recall feeling ever before in physical life.
Okay, Anita, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Neil, for inviting me.
Anita, to get started, I'd love to ask you. So I've heard people say that the secret to life is to die before you die. And I'm speaking to you today, and I'm aware that you've had this experience. You've actually died. So, to get started, can you tell us about, just the actual physical conditions on that day? Like, had your heart stopped? Did the hospital pronounce you as dead? Like, was it an official death at the time?
So although my heart hadn't stopped, my body was completely emaciated. I weighed about 85 pounds. My organs had shut down. So my kidneys had stopped functioning and the other organs were shutting down one by one. I was in a coma. The doctors told my family that I was not going to come out of the coma, that my body was now dying. Now, I had these tumors, cancerous tumors. It was lymphoma. So it had spread throughout my entire lymphatic system. And these tumors were the size of golf balls. And I had them, and they were physically visible because they stuck out because I was so skinny. I was like a skeleton. And these tumors, I had them from the base of my skull all around my neck, so you could actually see them jutting out under my arms. I couldn't even put my arms down properly, and in my chest and all the way down to my abdomen. And at that point also, my lungs were filled with fluid. I couldn't even lie flat because I would choke on my own fluid. So this was, say, before I went into the coma. I wasn't able to even walk because I didn't have the strength in my legs to walk. Even if I sat up, I couldn't hold my head up because my neck didn't even have the strength to hold my head up. I was so weak. My muscles were completely deteriorated. They had atrophied completely. So even if I sat up, my head would be hanging down on my neck like that. And so I was literally, completely wasted away. And then I went into a coma. And I was connected to machines. I couldn't breathe without the aid of the machine, the oxygen machine. I just couldn't draw enough breath. So there I was connected to machines, heart rate monitors and everything. I went into a coma. The kidneys started to shut down. The other organs started to shut down. And the doctors told my family, and it's even written in my medical records, that the family has been informed, patient is dying and is not, and literally is in the final hours of life, final stages. And it was at that point that I actually felt that I had left my physical body and was aware of everything that was happening. But the part of me that had left the body, I felt incredible. It was, I felt light, I felt free, the pain was gone, The fear was gone. You know, I feared cancer. I feared the treatments for cancer. I feared death. Um, and all of that was just gone. I felt incredible. I felt alive, more alive than I ever recall feeling ever before in physical life.
This is incredible. So whenever this had happened and you had this feeling of aliveness after potentially leaving your body and everything, what was your inner subjective experience of that? Like what happened for you whenever you you did temporarily die?
So the feeling I had, so first of all, I felt limitless because there's no physical body to tie you down or to bind you. And it was like I felt very expansive, like I could be anywhere I wanted to be. And I felt powerful. And I felt like I was in this state of clarity. And I thought, oh my gosh, is this, and I'm going to say it, but I actually felt, is this what it feels like to be God? You know, it was like, that's how powerful I felt. So powerful, like, oh God, I wish I knew this is who I really was when I was in the physical body. And it makes no sense that I need to die to find out this is who I really am, because I felt all powerful, all knowing, and life made sense from that perspective. It was really like a state of clarity. I felt what I can only describe as love. There's no adequate word to describe it, but I felt like I had spent a lifetime of seeking approval and looking to be loved and always feeling I was not good enough. But in this state, it was like, but I am love and I am loved and I don't need to prove anything. I've come into the body just to express myself. There's nothing to do or be, just to be myself. I came here just to play. And why did I take life so seriously? Why did I allow myself to get so sick? And, you know, it was all these feelings like, oh God, why didn't I know this? Why didn't I know this? It was that kind of a feeling. But I was ecstatic. It was very joyful. And then I guess I started to become, so I was aware of what the doctors were telling my family. They were saying these were my final hours. And I wanted my family to know that I'm fine, I'm great, it's amazing here, and you should all come here, and you will one day. And but there was no way of communicating that to them because I mean, who I was in that state, I had no physical body or vocal cords or anything. And I wasn't even viewing with physical eyes. It was more like awareness. I had a 360-degree peripheral awareness. And I could see, hear, and feel things. Like I could feel the emotions of everyone. I could see and hear things that were beyond the room where my physical body was. And, you know, it was my husband, the doctors were telling my husband, I'm not even going to make it through the night. And they were telling him that down the hallway at the nurse's station. So, but I was able to be aware of it and hear the conversation and everything. So, but I felt I was just expanding and expanding. And then I started to become aware of other beings. And these were beings that had passed on before, you know, my loved ones. Like I became aware of my dad, who had died 10 years prior. And I felt this beautiful, unconditional love from him. Now, I'd spent an entire lifetime trying to win his approval when he was alive, and I never felt I got it. I had to work really hard to earn it, and I never got it. All I ever felt from my dad was shame because, you know, I grew up in a culture where there's so much gender disparity, and it's almost like you get shamed just for being a woman, or a woman who wants more than just to get married and be someone's wife. You know, I wanted to travel, I wanted my independence, I wanted to work, and I had all these dreams, but I was shamed for having them. And my dad just wanted me to be a good Indian girl and have an arranged marriage, and I didn't want that. But so I spent a lifetime trying to win my dad's approval, and here I was without my body, in spirit, and my dad in spirit. And all I felt from him was pure, unconditional love, just love. And I realized that when we leave our bodies, we leave behind our culture, our beliefs, our gender, we leave all of that behind. And our spirit, our soul is just pure, unconditional love. So that was incredible for me.
That's amazing. So when when all of that cultural conditioning and beliefs, race, ethnicity, gender, all those things are taken away, we're left with a core essence. Something is there that comes before this lifetime and is after this lifetime as well. And could you maybe say a little bit more about how I know it's probably impossible to put into words, but how would you describe would you say it's just pure love? Like, how would you describe what that actually is, you know?
So words are really inadequate for what that is. It is pure essence, pure consciousness. We can call it whatever we want, but it is something that is like there's no room for in this, like who we are, who we become. I would say it's like an incredibly evolved version of who we are, of how we experience ourselves in this physical life. Because here in the physical, we people, humans, we are so competitive and combative, and we're here still dealing with not just competition and jealousy and envy and all these things, but as a whole, as a planet, people, we are still spending more money on weapons to kill each other than we are on food to feed each other. Nations are still, like when you've had an experience like that, you think, wow, why are we as humans still so unevolved? Because when you're in that state and you see who you really are as a essence, and you realize your capacity and what you're capable of, and you see how every single soul is connected to you, you feel what everyone is feeling. You're like, wow, if everybody could experience this now, this level of love for every human, every being, every animal, everything, all wars would stop just like that. They would literally just stop. We would have an instant human consciousness evolution in an instant. And so it's, and then when you come back here, which I had to come back here, and you're dealing with people again on a human level, it can be really jarring, like really jarring. So this is why I think everybody should die before they die. It would change the world. It really would change the world.
Especially politicians and world leaders and stuff. We've got to arrange
Oh
some
my
kind
God.
of arranged near-death experience for them all, I think. Um,
Yes.
so
100. Yes.
am I right in saying, Anita, that you had a choice and you chose to come back, and part of the reason for this was you had a purpose that you needed to come back and fulfill, but also that this was linked with your husband's purpose as well. And to me, that was
Yes.
really interesting because this this hints at that there's differentiation at this level as well. There's different beings once you sort of go beyond, and that we might be going through lifetimes together with other people. And this sounds, I can't believe I even had this conversation, but I have to ask, was that what you sort of came away with there? And can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yes. So what I try and do is I try not to make, even as I explain my story and what happened with me, I like to say that this is my experience, because I don't want people to think, and not even to think, I'm not trying to change people's beliefs and views, because to me, it absolutely doesn't matter whether you're religious and which religion you are, or whether you're not religious or agnostic or atheist, and even, whether people politically vote left or right, and none of it matters. When you die, literally none of that matters. And so it doesn't matter to me, and I'm not trying to change anyone's beliefs. But what I realized is that, so when I share, I make it clear this is my experience and this is how I experienced it. And it completely changed the way I view life. And so I share it in the hope that it will help other people to change their view of life and improve your life. That's my only intention. My only intention is for other people to see life and to find joy and to be as happy as they are capable of being, because I only learned it by dying. And my only intention is for other people to feel it, because if we all felt it, really we would have an uplifted planet. So going back really to your question, I absolutely did feel that my husband and my purpose was linked. So so I was in this state of what I call the state of clarity, where I actually understood why I had gotten so sick. I understood why I had the cancer, how it was that I came to be lying in that hospital bed on that day, dying. A lot of it was because of the choices and decisions I had made, not through any fault of my own, but because of, so many things contributed, cultural conditioning and beliefs and so on. And in this state of clarity, I was able to see through all the conditioning and see my soul for who I was. And when I was given the choice as to whether I wanted to come back or not, no part of me wanted to come back because it was so beautiful on that side. And my family was suffering, taking care of me. My body was so sick. I had been suffering. But that's when I started to get the message. And it seemed like it was my dad that was conveying the message. You know, we have no vocal cords, so we're not talking, but we're getting these messages, just receiving messages. And I got the message that that now that I know who I truly am, if I did choose to go back, my body would heal very, very quickly. And also a part of the message was my purpose was not complete. And if I don't go back, I would be missing out on the gifts that I had already suffered enough. And I had some gifts waiting for me. And that my purpose and my husband's purpose was linked. And if I didn't come back, he would not be able to complete his purpose either. And his soul would create an early exit for him as well, so that he would end up joining me over there. And, you know, when I say early exit, time on that side is very different. So it could be 6 months, it could be a year, it could be 2 years, but but his life would end early because he would not be fulfilling his purpose either.
Wow. And you say, you know, that time doesn't function in the same way there. Maybe it's not even a thing there. And would it be right in saying that when we're talking about distance and space and everything here as well, like, you know, people will think about you sort of in some like realm in space here, and this is all happening far away. But am I right in saying that these beings and everything, that they're like in your immediate environment always, but we're just not able to tune into them because we're operating in a different frequency? But if we're able to raise our frequency enough, we're it's not that we can see them or anything that there, but we're more able to tune into any signals they might be giving us. Is that fair enough?
That is very fair. Yes, what you said is very fair, in that when I started to come out of the coma and come here, I was shocked. You know, it's like I started to say that something like, I actually said, you know how we talk about the veil between this side and that side? It's not, I'm not only going to say that the veil is thin, I'm going to say that there is no veil. That side is here. It's this side. They're all here. Dad's right here. And so my family thought I was delusional because I was coming out of the coma and I was saying, Dad is here. He's right here. He's telling me it's not my time. And that is exactly right. there is no other side. Our loved ones are not somewhere else out in deep space. It's all right here, but it's outside of our spectrum of what we can see, hear, feel, taste, touch with our five senses. We're so conditioned to living through our five senses that this is outside of these five senses. And you have clairvoyants and psychics and intuitives who can tap in. That's because it's all right here. And we can all do that if we were able to just, if we were focused on learning how to do it, everybody could do it. I actually think we're born with the gift of connecting to the other side. So I don't think it's a matter of, it's something we have to learn. I think it's a matter of we have to unlearn what we've accumulated to condition us to believe that this is something else. In other words, we're born connected to the other side, and then it gets conditioned out of us.
Yeah, this is so interesting. So, and it's plausible because if you think about it, like our five senses only give us access to a tiny spectrum of what's available in consciousness. So if you look at like other animals, like you look at like mantis shrimp can see like, I don't know, like 30 colors that we can't see. Like bees can navigate using the Earth's magnetic field. Like snakes can see like infrared radiation, So it's like we're only tuning into what our five senses allow us to see. But who's to say that outside of our sensory system, there's a whole lot of other things going on that we just can't tune into?
Exactly. And what I think is interesting is that when humans talk about it, as humans being able to tune in, and it really, all the skeptics and debunkers come swooping down on anything that we say that we're able to do. But when you talk about your dog being able to do it, no one bats an eyelid. I mean, I talk about my dog Cosmo. He's in spirit now. But when I speak about how he used to tune in and knew I was coming home 5 minutes before I was even anywhere near the driveway, how did he know? What was he tuning into? And when we talk about that, when we talk about our pets being able to intuit things, or knowing when a storm is coming, or if there's going to be an earthquake, and so the animals know. And no one questions it. We study it, we test it, we watch documentaries on it and YouTube videos on the animal that knew this and the pet that knew this. But the minute you talk about humans, you have all the debunkers coming and swooping down on them.
Totally.
Yeah.
So another thing that came to my mind here when I was thinking about this interview was, so if there is continuation beyond this life, what about people that have committed terrible acts of evil and inflicted suffering in the lives of others? When we think about like a Hitler, it's like a merger of Hitler and Stalin. What could we? What might happen to people like that after they leave this life? Have you thought about that? Like, have you ever had any insights in that area?
Yes, I do, but I know that what I say is not very popular because we still think very linear, and we think in terms of punishment and reward, and it's a very linear thinking. But really, what I believe is that if Hitler had a glimpse of who he truly was, or Stalin, if they had a glimpse of who they truly were and how they were already connected with everyone, and and I can go deeper into what I mean by the connection, but I know that if any of these people had a near-death experience, they would never have done what they did. And it really is because they are so disconnected from the truth of who they really are and what they are in terms of who we are as a people, as a race, as a culture. Because when you are not in your body, you feel what everybody else is feeling. You just tune in and you feel. It's like there's nowhere that you begin and you end. And so sometimes I use the analogy of a mirror ball. So I'm going to do that because I have to use analogies because there are no words to describe this experience. So I'm going to use words like energy. Energy is so generic. I wish that there was a better word. But let's start with the mirror ball. So you know those mirror balls that from the days of the disco era, where you have this ball, disco ball with all these little mirror tiles. Now, if you imagine that one of those disco balls is all of us together, and each of these mirror tiles is one soul. And each tile is, so if each tile is one soul, and I'm not saying it's one person in the physical living, but it's you out of your body. Like when you die and you realize, oh my gosh, I'm still continuing. I am something else. I'm something much bigger. And so each of these souls, whether it's your soul, my dad's soul, my other deceased loved ones, my grandparents, as well as the living people, all our souls are one, together is one mirror ball. Each one of us represent one tile. Some of us are incarnate as physical bodies and some aren't, but all our souls are connected. Your soul and my soul, at the soul level, we are connected. And so at some level, my soul can communicate with yours, but you and I see each other as separate because we're separate physical bodies. So what I often say is that, so when there's light shining on the mirror ball, many of these tiles refract and show a speck on the walls. And these specks, we perceive them as being separate. And so that's us thinking we are all separate beings. And as the mirror ball spins, we're all like chasing each other, and each of us thinking we're separate. But when we die and we are spirit, we're like, oh my gosh, I'm connected to every other soul. I'm absolutely connected to every other soul. And so when we see that we're connected to every soul, we start to realize that that I am one cell of a whole. Each of us is one cell of a whole. So if I am harming other people, I am harming other cells of the whole. So to put it a different way, if we think of every human being on this planet as one cell of a living organism, let's say this planet is a living organism and every human is one cell. From that perspective, it's almost as if the planet is like one physical body and each humans are the cells, and someone like a Hitler or a Stalin is actually harming itself, the physical body. It's like your own cells attacking each other. When you're outside of your body, you can actually see that, oh my gosh, what was I doing? What was I thinking? How idiotic that I was contributing to the demise of my bigger self, which is part of this whole. So in other words, what we are doing to the whole, what we are doing to our planet, what we are doing to our brothers and sisters, we are doing to humanity as a whole. And every single one of us is intrinsically embedded in part of the whole. Each one of us is like one thread of a tapestry. And we're contributing damage to the whole tapestry as we, send nuclear weapons and kill other people on the planet and kill our brothers and sisters, regardless of what color and race they are. I hope I'm making myself clear, but it's, so when we die, we see the full picture. And then what we do, we don't go into some form of eternal hell forever. And I'm going to say that as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't exist. Hell exists here because we create it here. Humans create it. There's no hell on the other side because there's no competition, there's no envy, there's no killing, none of that exists, because spirit cannot feel pain and hurt. You cannot be damaged. You cannot burn. So that doesn't exist on the other side. But there is an awakening where you're like, oh, I should have done things differently. And from that side, we can actually help, and we can actually guide, and we can actually work with this level and help evolve. And I'm going to go so far as to say that the ones who have hurt us the most are currently helping us the most to make up for what they've done, because they can see the big picture.
That's a radical theory. I'm sure that's been hard to. You've probably taken a lot of flack for that, I
I
would
take
say.
a lot of flack for that, a lot of flack, where I get told I will be going to hell for saying that.
Wow.
But
Wow. Okay.
I'm like, I'm fine, try me, because I've been there and back. I know what I've experienced, and nothing can take it away. And I don't need anybody to believe me or to approve or anything. I just live my life. Also, I never set out to share my story. I only share because other people ask, because Wayne Dyer brought it out into the public. And many times I've tried to pause or stop, or I felt burned out, but it just keeps propagating.
Well, it seems like if you've had this experience, it must carry a little bit of responsibility to share that with others, because what you're sharing is, potentially very liberating for people, and is going to help people, I suppose, better navigate this life. But something that's interesting is, that when you were having this experience, you had a very real sense that you had a purpose that you had to come back and fulfill. So do you think that each one of us comes, before we enter this life, we have an intention, like our soul has an intention that it wants to fulfill through us? And yeah, so if that's the case, are there any consequences of not actualizing that? Or like, so, sorry, I should ask this question. Sorry, I'm asking so many questions at once. um, but the question I want to ask first, Anita, is for someone that hasn't figured out what that purpose is yet, have you got any guidance for them, anything you would say to someone in that situation?
Absolutely. So we all come here with an intention, and and your intention doesn't have to be huge and world changing. It can be anything. The intention can be just to be the best dad there ever is, or to be a dad to somebody who is going to be an amazing influence in the world, or it could be to be a great teacher, or whether it's in a school system or on the world stage. So, everybody's intention is very, very different. It could be to be the best healthcare giver, or your intention could be just to serve as being a nurse or a doctor in a healthcare system. Whatever it is, we come here with an intention, and that intention, every single one of us, no matter how small the intention, whether it's just to be the best parent, every single intention is in some way to contribute to make the world a better place. And some come with big intentions and some come with little ones. But in everybody, in their own way, their intention is to uplift the planet, or to contribute, or to make the world a better place. But what happens is that when we come here, we lose our way. And everybody's intention, somehow, when you are following your intention, you feel like you're following your purpose. You feel that you have found your calling in life. I like the word calling, because it's almost like it's your future self calling you forward, because your intention is kind of how you see your future planning out before you even come here. But we have the free will as to whether we actually want to follow that calling or not. And things happen along the way. We get called on other things. We get choices. Every step of the way, we get choices. And I'm going to really simplify it, but it doesn't always feel that simple when we're dealing with issues and problems. But every step of the way we have choices. And to simplify it, our choices, the choices that we make stem from either fear or love. In other words, I'm faced with a choice. Am I going to make my choice from a place of fear, that I fear a better choice won't come along, or that I fear that if I don't do this, I'm going to meet people's disapproval and I need their approval? Those are fear-based choices. Or am I going to make it from a place of love? Oh, this feels like my calling. This is my passion. That's from a place of love. So in other words, choosing a job I hate because it pays more money because I fear not having money, versus choosing a job that I love even though it pays much less, but it feels like it's part of my calling. Which one do I choose? So do we make our choices from a place of fear or love? So that's a simple way of putting it. Many, many people make their choices from a place of fear. And when you make a cumulative number of choices from a place of fear, one after the other, you keep straying from your intention, and you start to get lost, and you lose yourself in life, and you lose your purpose. And that's what I saw when I was there. I was like, wow, I am so far off the intention. No wonder my body kept telling me, no, this is not who you are. No, you don't need everybody's approval. No, you're not you're not a second-class citizen just because you're female in your culture. And so all these things that I saw through very clearly at death's door, I came back knowing, no, I'm not any of those things. This is who I am. I've come back to make my choices from a place of love. Everything I do now is because I'm following my passion. I'm following my intention. And if that's all anybody was to do, just to make every choice because it feels good, because it's the choice that ignites them and gives them joy, that joy is a signal that your soul is lighting up. It's like, yes, this is what I wanted to do. And it could be little choices, but it leads, all of them add up, and it leads you somewhere bigger and bigger. And if that's all anybody were to do, it would change their life.
It's beautiful. It reminds me of something I've heard you say, Anita, about viewing energy as a currency. Can you tell us about this and the importance of this idea?
Yes. So there are two elements to this. One is, like, if we think in terms of all of us, our energy, every single one of us, our energy. And if we go back to what I was saying earlier about all of us together, where each one of us is a cell on one organism, the earth, and if all of us are energy, if you deplete your energy, you are depleting energy from the whole. If all of us expanded our energy, if each of us just took responsibility for our own energy and expanded our own energy, we would really have a beautifully healed, whole, energized planet. So going back to the individual, as an individual, what if you were to see your own energy as a currency? And so let's say you, every morning, you wake up, a good night's sleep were to give you 12 units of energy. So let's say 8 hours of good sleep gives you 12 units of energy. And that's the currency. That's what you wake up with in the morning, 12 units of energy. As you go through the day, think about what you do through the day. Do you go to a job that you hate or you love, or is it just meh? So in other words, are you expending energy at your job? Now, if it's a job you're passionate about, that you love, you actually get energized at your work. Maybe there are some days you get energized and some days you don't. But it's good to look at it. If on the whole, your job gives you energy equity, that's a good thing. But if every single day your job is taking energy from you, you start to go into energy deficit. So let's say you go into work and you're in a job you hate, but you're in it for the money. And so you use 8 units of energy. at work. So you come home and you've only got 4 units of energy. Now, when you come home, let's say you play with your puppy, and so your puppy immediately gives you 4 more units of energy and you're at 8. But are you in a relationship you love, or are you lonely, or are you in a terrible relationship? So being at home, whether it's living alone or in a terrible relationship, ask yourself, is your home life taking away your energy, or is it contributing to your energy? Let's say you have a home life that takes away from your energy. So you negate, let's say, another 4. And then you go to sleep, but you have a restless sleep. You don't sleep well. So if you were at 8 after playing with your dog, and then you're at 4 because you don't have a great home life, you're feeling lonely, you're depressed, so you're at 4, you go to bed, you're feeling really down, and because you're feeling down, you wake up with only 8 units of energy because you've had a bad night's sleep. So you're at 12 units. And so it really takes a bit of evaluating as to what every action does. Is it giving you equity or deficit, or how much equity? So you wake up the following morning, and so although you're at 12 again, you only got 8 overnight. But this 12 now, you're going to use it up at your day's work. You're going to then go home with a home life you don't like. You're going to go to bed with 0 because you use up 8 to go to work and so on. So now let's say you go to bed with 0 and the next day you wake up with 8 because you don't have a good night's sleep. By the end of that day, you're going to be at a negative. Now, if every day you're at energy negative, you continue to go into negative, that's when your body starts to get sick. And here's what's interesting. When I've told people that your life is killing you, you've really got to quit your job and get another life, and change your life, people say, I can't quit my job. It'll kill me if I quit my job because I need the money to put food on the table. I try and tell them that the way you're living life right now is already killing you, because that's what happened to me. I was at energy deficit and I didn't even know it because I thought that's how life is. I walk around this world and I see thousands upon thousands of people living on energy deficit, living on going to the doctors, living on getting pills. That's not how it's supposed to be. When you're living on energy equity, you don't need all those doctor visits and pills. And when you're on energy equity, you actually start to make more money, even if you don't start that way. But because as you accumulate more energy, we then become more, I'm going to say more passionate, more energized, more attractive, if you will. And I want you to think about it. When you hire someone, or when you want to invite someone somewhere, or when you want a speaker for an event, do you want an inspiring, uplifting speaker, or a depleted one that has energy deficit, that's going to bring everyone down? And what happens is the more depleted people are, the more they're drawing on other people's energy without realizing it. But the more uplifted someone is, the more energy equity they have, the more other people are attracted to them because they have all this energy. And so if people could see energy, we would realize that our biggest commodity is energy, not money. Right now, we put money as our number one value. The near-death experience made me realize, no, my energy is my number one value. It's the number one thing currency that I carry with me wherever I go, because I take it with me where I go. It's what I take with me when I die.
It's a simple idea, but I think that's incredibly powerful. Like, especially when you're thinking about careers and jobs and things. Like, if you're optimizing for the normal currency of just finances, then you could pick something that could totally drain you of energy. Whereas if you're taking both into consideration, but really optimizing for the currency of energy, then you're just going to be full of life most of the time, because what you're doing is giving you energy, and it's really, that's going to spill over into other things as well. So Such a great idea, Anita. Thanks for sharing.
You're
Um,
welcome. Yeah.
another in your new book, "Sensitive is the
Sense.
New Strong," which is a brilliant read, by the way. You talk a lot about uh, the inner mystic, and something I wanted to ask you about during this interview is, how would you define what that is, and how can someone listening to this really get in touch with that inner mystic within?
So it's not as hard as it sounds. We all have an inner mystic. I coined that term for our inner self because it gave it a more tangible feel, but it's basically the part of us, our soul, the part of us that always lives and has always lived. It's the part of us that knows our intention, the part of us that chose to come here to fulfill that intention. So it really is about getting in touch with that part of us. And so all we have to do is find times when we are, when we have time, when we can just be quiet and turn inward. With me, I find music helps me. It doesn't have to be meditative music, but it can be. For some people, it's classical music. For some people, it's meditative, instrumental music. But sometimes even a nice ballad, a nice song with beautiful words can also take you there. And it is just getting into this state where you start to feel really good. Or even sometimes I get into this state when I'm cooking. I love cooking. That's my that's something that I just enjoy, and it's where I get really creative. The other thing I enjoy doing is writing. I literally feel like I'm channeling when I'm just writing. So these activities allow me to get into this state where you feel like you're tapping into something that's other than yourself. And what happens is inspiration comes through that seems to be from beyond anything you could know in this physical world. I get that way even when I get on stage to speak, because if you knew me before the near-death experience, you would know that the person who's on stage and the person who I am as a person are like two different people. Because the person I was, certainly before the near-death experience, I was somebody who was extremely shy and introverted, and probably the least qualified person for this to happen to, for what I'm doing today, being out on the world stage, traveling, speaking, out on podcasts. So I'm probably, I would never have imagined that for someone like me. So it's almost like I tap into something else that's different. It's not part of my cultural conditioning or any conditioning from this lifetime. It's something else. It's that inner mystic. And we all have it, and we can all channel it. And what I do is I allow that part of me to take the lead. Because when I let the physical, conditioned by this world part of me take the lead, that's when all the choices are made from fear. But when I let the non-physical, the inner mystic part of me take the lead, that's when I'm led by love and passion and joy, and I get energized.
For sure, for sure. That's been my experience as well. Anytime I've made a choice out of scarcity or fear or whatever, it's always led to more of the same. Whereas when it's been from a place of love and courage or whatever, it's always, even though it might have been a bit more uncertain, it's always led to good things, and it's always worked out in the end. When I haven't been, for example, worried about making money, the money sort of always just follows suit if I'm doing something I really care about and I really want to do. It just looks after itself, funnily enough.
Exactly right. And I will tell you, even uh, when, like when I get out there and share my message and I speak, um, I've also realized that really it's the intention behind what you say. Everything you do, sorry, everything we do, it's the intention behind what we do and not what we do. So when you're doing something with the intention of love, you get a very different result from somebody who's doing the same thing, but they're doing it as a chore. It's very, very different. And the two people could be doing the same thing. And so what I tend to do is, even when I hire people who work with me, I only want to hire people who want to do the work. If they're doing it as a job just for the money, I feel their energy right away. I feel their energy. And then I sometimes talk to them and I coach them and I ask them, what is it you really want to do? What's your passion? And I actually help them to move on in the direction of their passion. I would rather they do that than to continue to work with me as a job just to make money, because I want people who are passionate, because I want to work with that energy. And I want people who are energy rich.
Definitely, definitely. So with the book Sensitive is the New Strong, obviously I'm going to try and ask you to condense maybe some of the best insights from hundreds of pages into, a few sentences here. But what would you say are the most important things you want people to take away from reading that book? Because there's blessings to being an empath, but there's also downsides too. So could you maybe share some of those insights?
Absolutely. So first of all, I want to tell people who are empaths, who are super sensitive, that there's nothing wrong with you. And actually, the world needs to be more like you. And you are actually the future of humanity, the way I see it, speaking from my own experience on the other side. You are the future of humanity. If you are someone who identifies as being highly sensitive, super empathic, compassionate, the way that our... Go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt, Anita. There's a quote. It's like, "The meek shall inherit the earth." Do you think that's what that's about?
Yes and no. So I have thought about that too. And I do see that as being happening. What I want the sensitive people to know is that, you see, the word meek, sometimes I don't want people to be doormats, because there's that as well. That's the thing to caution against. But yes, I have thought of that statement, and I have thought that yes, that is what is probably going to happen, but that's not a reason to allow yourself to be a doormat, because being a doormat means suppressing who you are. So being meek doesn't mean suppressing who you are. It's you still have to be strong, but it doesn't mean you are aggressive or ruthless. So so this is why I want to qualify a few things, in that sensitivity has been something that we have seen as a weakness, and we have to change the metrics of how we define weakness and strength. And this is the issue I have. Currently, our culture, we define things like compassion, empathy, sensitivity as weaknesses. And we tell people who are sensitive, who feel emotional, we tell them that you won't go very far, that you will, that big boys, that boys don't cry. And men get it worse than women. And men are told that you won't make it up the corporate ladder, you've got to toughen up, you've got to be more ruthless. And when people are aggressive and ruthless and highly competitive, they're actually rewarded for it in our current system. Where they're rewarded for it, they're voted into power, they're put into leadership positions, and we look up to them. And these are people who are ruthless and competitive and lack compassion. And we actually look up to those people and put them in power, and we see them as strong, and we see them as leaders. And then we wonder why our world is the way it is. Why is it that we're still having wars? Why is it we're still spending so much money on weapons to kill each other? So we wonder, why is the world so messed up, so filled with fear, so scary, when we're the ones that are putting people into power, and we've defined these traits as strengths. So until we can actually come together and say, compassion is a strength, not a weakness, because the world is sorely lacking in compassion. Love, having love for self and others, is a strength, not a weakness. Having empathy is a strength, not a weakness. So it really means changing our metrics around what it means to be strong. And it really means seeing things like ruthlessness and aggression as a weakness, not as a strength, because what we're doing is we're allowing the bullies to get ahead, and we're allowing the bullies to win, but those are weaker traits. We have to actually decide that we want to change the metrics around what we are going to look up to, what we are going to see as strengths, what we want to see in power. And that's when we'll start to see it change. So that's what really the book is about. It's about making you think differently about what we define as strengths and what we define as weaknesses, and about making you realize why the world has become so hard. And it's also about encouraging the empaths among us to raise our voices and to become stronger. So this is where I have the issue with the word meek, because if the empaths stay downtrodden, if we stay with the belief that, oh, we are weak, we're the bullied, we're downtrodden, we need to win people's approval, we need to stay quiet, we need to stay in the corner, it's not going to change the world. The meek need to raise their voice. The empaths need to raise their voice, because here's the other thing I believe, is that when an empath raises their voice, it's very different from when somebody who is ruthless or aggressive raises their voice. It's a very different voice. When an empath magnifies who they are, an empath is someone who has a lot of feeling for everyone around them and the planet. When empaths become bigger, the planet gets better. When the ruthless and the aggressive get bigger, only they get better and everyone else gets worse. That's how I see it.
For sure, for sure. Okay, Anita, just one last question to wrap up. So you went from living a life where, by all accounts, it seems that you were living in fear for most of it, and then you had
Yeah.
you nearly died, and then out of that, you became, you could argue, fearless in a lot of what you did. You totally transformed as a person. You're totally, unrecognizable from who you were before in a lot of respects. So, for someone listening to this that would love to even have a little bit of that, like a little bit more courage, a little bit more fearlessness in their life, what would you say to someone like that?
I would say start with baby steps at learning to love yourself for who you are. Really, really baby steps. And just start with seeing, like, do I beat myself up? Do I criticize myself? And start, like, a real baby step is to just start looking for positive traits within yourself so that you build yourself up slowly. Like, what are the think of 5 positive traits that you have, and even do that exercise every day, and then start making choices in your life from a place of love instead of fear. In other words, do things because you love to do them. You don't have to justify it. You don't have to prove yourself. Just do it because you love to do it, because your soul it deserves it. Your soul is an expression of God or source or the whole or whatever we want to call it. It doesn't matter to me. But your soul is here to experience life and to express itself. Allow itself to do that, and do it in baby steps. That's what I'd say.
Sure. Well, it seems that, love is the way to do that. That's where it starts, that self-love, and then that grows out. Well, Anita, I want to say thank you so much for your time today. I'm really glad that you chose to come back and share your experiences with us. Where can people find you online? Where can they learn more about your work and your books?
Oh, thank you, Niall. So I have a website that's anitamoorjani.com. And everything is on there, including speaking events. And I also have a online membership sanctuary where I actually help people, and we have courses and classes and live Zoom calls called anitamoorjanisanctuary.com. And of course, all my books are available on Amazon. But I also have a YouTube channel, a thriving YouTube channel, where I offer tons and tons of free videos to people. So really everything, my story is available out there for everybody. And I would love for everybody to subscribe to my YouTube, or join me on my social media, Instagram, Facebook. And and really all I want to do is just spread love and joy and just help people to live the best life that they can.
Amazing. Okay. Thank you, Anita.
Thank you so much, Niall. Thank you very much. It's been an honor and a pleasure.